All righty, welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the Legal Website Warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington, serving online entrepreneurs throughout the US and the world. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. I am super excited to introduce Christine Schlonski. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you, Heather. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, so fun to see you again. So the last time Christine and I connected, she was running a summit. And remind me what the summit was called?
It was called The Profitable Coach.
The Profitable Coach, yes. So Christine is all about sales and doing sales with heart. And so for those of you that don't know Christine, she is the founder of Heart Sells Academy and host of Heart Sells podcast, works with heart-centered, driven entrepreneurs who love what they do but can't sell. She shows them how to sell with ease, grace, and conviction while being authentic. Christine's experience includes over 12 years in successful selling and closing high-ticket live events in the corporate world. As a former sales director, she has made millions in revenue herself and through the successful sales teams she's built throughout her career. In her Heart Sells Academy, she has helped hundreds of entrepreneurs redefine sales for more impact and profit. So happy to have you here. This is an important topic.
Yeah, I love the topic. Just really, really dear to my heart because I see so many wonderful entrepreneurs just struggling with it. And sales can be a natural process. It doesn't need to be weird or feel icky or sleazy. Just can be that you offer your gifts to the world, like you do with your wonderful work, right? You do need an attorney who knows what the person is doing. So you are in the best hands if you're here working with Heather. And I'm so excited to have this wonderful conversation.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. So I'm curious, what got you into sales in the first place? What was your pathway into sales?
Yeah, as often, right? You have these unforeseen things in life. And I never ever planned to be in sales, to become a salesperson, because for me, sales was something like you did to the other person, right? Asking for money is like, no, that you don't do that. So yeah, I like after, I finished my studies in the south of Germany, I landed my first job and, I started to have an income and I thought, well, that's nice. And the landscape is beautiful, but I wanted a little bit more life. I had just moved from Paris to the south of Germany to a tiny, smaller city, village, town. And and I thought, well, I wanted to live in a bigger city that gives me more options and choices. So I decided to move to Berlin, and I wanted to have a job there that I had picked more strategically than the one I had, if that makes sense. I thought, well, it needs to be a big company where I can actually have a career, not a small place where, you do one step and then the career ladder ends because the place is too small. So yeah, there were like these things. And so I looked for a company, international background, big company, lots of possibility. And I just sent in my CV because I didn't see a job opening. So I was like, I'm going to be like really bold. I'm just going to send my CV, let them know that I'm interested in working for them because I loved what I had seen online. Obviously, they were in Berlin. And well, they called me back, which was great. And then they said, well, we have an opening in the sales department. And, first I was like, yeah. And then I was like, oh, oh, well, sales department.
Right. What did I just get myself into?
Yeah, not really for me. But the person calling me was a really great salesperson, and he was the sales director of the department. So he found a way to convince me that sales can be learned. And I really, really wanted to move to Berlin. So I ended up saying yes. And I landed my first sales job. moving to Berlin. So yeah,
Wow.
that's where it all started.
Yeah. What do you feel like were some of your most important early lessons in sales?
It actually is a learnable skill. I wanted to believe it back then, but I wasn't, like there was a part in me that had this belief, like to be a good salesperson, you have to be sleazy. You
Yeah.
have to manipulate people. You have to make people buy. So it was more like from that, from that mindset, like you do something to a person. The product I sold back then was like amazing. I was really connected. I loved all the opportunity in the company, and I knew that they would serve their clients in a professional, good way. But yeah, like that sales as a learnable skill was something that I really did discover. And they showed me obviously a sales process. Before I didn't even have an idea that there is like a process. So yeah, and then working with clients, basically cold calling was something I really, really had to get over myself, because I had like a huge resistance to just pick up the phone and call a person. Yeah, but
Well,
it's really, it's learnable.
yeah, I mean, I love that. I think absolutely. And it's one of the earliest skills that people should be learning in their business, right?
Yeah,
The
definitely.
but speaking of cold calling, the thing that's interesting about it is that does feel different, even when I think about that versus a sales call where somebody reaches out to you, they've already expressed an interest. It does feel very different. And I assume that those calls are handled in different ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. As you already said, if somebody reaches out to you,
Mhm.
they already have a reason. It's like they don't sit at home, are bored and think like, well, who could I call? Let's see.
Yes, right. You're not convincing them. I think the
Yeah.
cold calling, like, oh my gosh, it probably makes most people want to break out in a cold sweat, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, did you end up getting to a place of being comfortable with cold calling? Like, did you ever enjoy that part of it?
Yeah, well, yeah, I did. It's also something you practice, and then it kind of becomes a habit.
Mhm.
And there's all the time like this moment where you take just a deep breath, dial the number, and then expect the worst and hope the best.
Yep.
And I think then you're in a good place, because when you're convinced of what you have to offer and you
Mm,
really see it as an opportunity, as a gift for the person, and you believe in what you sell, then it's so much easier than when
mhm,
you don't have anything good to sell. You just do it because of the money.
yeah.
That's another conversation. Yeah. But I do think when you have something you believe in,
Mhm,
it's more, and it's the same in entrepreneurship. Like hopefully you believe in your product, in your service. So you want to go out and you want to invite people to work with you, because that is the only way they will get the result they are looking for, right? They will get the transformation, or
mhm,
in your case, like the legal protection that they need. So if we would be hiding in our businesses,
mm,
right? Then, how could we then serve our soulmate clients, as I call them,
right.
that are kind of waiting for us?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you find now being in the position of teaching other people sales, right? What do you find to be either the biggest surprises or the excuse me, the biggest sticking points for people?
Yeah, it's the same that when I started. It's like people are, well, so conditioned,
Mm-hmm.
especially heart-centered people, right? If you're not heart-centered, you don't care. You can sell a fridge to an Eskimo. I mean, right? That it doesn't really matter. But usually I experience that like with coaches or experts, like they really want to do something good in the world. And but they are conditioned that sales is doing something to people, and then you have to take the money, and most of them like over deliver and undercharge, that's a whole nother story. So
Mm.
it's like that discovery that, hey, you can learn it. And if you're targeting the right person, so your soulmate client, and you have that perfect offer for this person, all you need to do is invite them. And all of a sudden, the sales conversation turns into a fun conversation that both parties can enjoy, where you don't have this aftertaste, right? Or the other, like sometimes, I have had sales calls where somebody called me and you think like, oh, like I want to take a shower, like after that conversation. It's like, wow, it was not good at all. And you feel how they started to try to manipulate you. But
Oh,
that's a thing, yeah.
yeah,
And you
it is
don't
a
need
thing.
to manipulate.
No, and I feel like there are some companies that teach really bad tactics and strategies. Like I've thought of various networking events, right? And people I know hate
Mm,
that word, but events that are designed to be that way. People come together, you're supposed to be talking business, learning what, other people are up to, and especially some of the multi-level marketing companies, that's where I've seen it, where it's like
yeah.
you get invited to a coffee chat or something, and like I remember within 1 minute she's not asking me any questions about myself at all, just here, click over on this link and watch this video. And I was like, No." Like there's so many ways I feel like people bungle this, and I think probably because they just don't know any better, not because they're
Yeah.
terrible humans. But um you mentioned earlier having a process, right? Is there a process that you train your clients on or walk people through, or a way to help your clients develop their own process?
Yeah, yeah, I'm totally for developing their own process,
Mm,
because it needs to be aligned from my point of view. It needs to be aligned with you, right? Then
mm,
you feel comfortable in your process. And obviously, it's a sales call, right? You
mm,
have something great to offer. The person has a need. You come together. You might not know each other.
mm,
You never have seen the person, and all of a sudden, you are on Zoom or on the phone, and there's always a little bit of
mm,
natural tension, I would say,
mm,
right? You might get excited, like, oh my goodness, like you're checking the boxes. I can really, really help this person, right? And the other person might get excited too, probably till the point when you say what it costs or your investment, and that excitement might cool down a little bit. It really depends. And
mm,
so there is always a little bit of tension in the call, and I think that's good.
mm,
Because, if you keep a bit of tension, you are alert, you are awake,
mm,
and, don't, you make sure that you don't become slobby in the conversation, but you really take in what the other person is saying, and you analyze how you can help them, and if you are the best person to help them, or if you might want to send them somewhere else, right? Which
mhm,
I think is a wonderful tool where you can keep your integrity, where you can be totally authentic. Like if somebody is
mm,
not a match for you, or you feel like, you don't want to work with them,
yep.
don't take them on board. Like send them somewhere else, do them this favor. It will leave you in a way better energy. It will actually help the other person. And yeah, you don't make the mistake on onboarding someone you don't really want to work with.
Oh, right. I mean, from so many perspectives, it's good advice, because usually when I'm working with somebody in a tough scenario, like
Mhm.
unwinding a difficult client scenario or something that went wrong, I'll ask somebody, what was one of the early red flags that you had? There almost always
Mm,
are red flags,
yes.
right? And so yeah, what you said about paying attention to how you feel and whether you even have the desire to work with somebody, I think is really important. Um, in the execution of, creating the process or learning sales, is there like a couple of key mistakes that people tend to make until they're figuring it out and getting better
Yeah.
at it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you kind of described it already because people just don't know. It really, really feels horrible when you get into the
Mm,
conversation and it's only about the other person, or they just wait for
mm,
like this millisecond for you to give them the stage, and then they go on and on and on. And, you know, if it's not a sales call where both parties are aware, like this is a sales call,
Yes.
don't sell.
Yeah.
I mean, make the offer to have to set up a proper call, especially in those networking
I love that.
events with some
Yes.
multi-level marketing. I have made this experience as well, right? People reaching out. I had it not too long ago and I thought, "Ugh, I should have known."
Right.
Like,
I
you know,
know.
nice conversation, started on Messenger, all the good reasons, what the person liked about me was like, oh, cool. That, I mean, this could really be a great conversation. And then 3 minutes, not even 3 minutes into the conversation, it was like about her. She found her purpose, and then it was about the products. And I was like, oh no, right? I should have known.
Don't you
But yeah,
wonder who is designing those scripts for people? Like, I feel
I
like
don't
it
know.
has to be coming from somewhere. I know, because it's partly so unbelievable when you're watching it happen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And they all have like not all, right? Sorry.
Mhm,
So many have the same process. And
mhm.
I don't even see how they can feel good with it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's also why, often sales has this weird feeling because we all have had bad sales experiences
Yeah.
in our life. Some were like major, right? Maybe we did like a really bad investment that we got talked into something that didn't serve us. And some are minor, right? If you buy the wrong
Mhm.
taste of bubble gum, you will live. But with other things, you might really get into struggling. So
Mhm.
yeah, and we all had that. So especially when we're heart-centered and then we want to serve our clients,
Mm.
that voice in our head telling us, well, don't be like this person. Like, oh, that was so yucky. Yeah. Right. You kind of don't even realize it, but you're in the conversation and you're worried that you come across like this person.
Yeah.
And instead of just serving the other person and also having the courage to ask the right questions, to ask if they're ready
Mm.
to move forward, to ask for your price, to make sure you ask those questions like, can you
Mm.
afford this? Like, do you have the funds to pay for this? That also is part of a sales conversation where you want to make sure your client is taken care of, right? You want to
Mm.
guide them through the conversation without manipulating, but with really making sure you understand the need and the desire so that you can serve in the best way possible.
Yeah. Well, I love that you brought up courage, because one of my questions was going to be, do you encounter people who really believe in their service or product, but they have a personal confidence issue,
Yeah.
right? Where the conversation is still just hard despite the belief in what they're doing.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
And the good news is though it becomes better because it's like a circle, right?
Mm.
You have like a state, right? You a belief system, and then
Yeah.
you have the courage, you do something, it creates a different result, and then from that result feeds into your new belief. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden you're in that circle where every time you have a conversation, it gets better and better and better. And, more people will say yes to you because now you stop being weird, right? Because of what I often see, if you don't have that courage, right? You have the conversation. It's like, oh, you are the expert. You can talk about your topic all day. It feels amazing. And then, like after 30 minutes or a little bit more, I kind of have to say the price. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And then, some people really become weird. They kind of change the energy.
Yes.
Um, maybe they whisper the price or they say it too loud because you want to make sure it's done with confidence. And it's like, oh, like, where is the person I just talked to? Where is the expert that was just here a millisecond ago? Now, something is off. It's not aligned. And that's
Mm.
also how we repel people, because we became weird in that situation.
Yeah. Oh, so many little potholes to step in, right? But what I'm hearing you say
Yes.
is you just have to do it, right? It's the
Yeah.
practice, it's the iteration of it. And just like any other skill, just building that skill will probably one call at a time or one meeting at a time.
Yeah. Just build that muscle.
Do you work with folks? Because I think a lot of people, when I look at my clients, for example, they might have different enrollment processes, even within the same business, right? So some of them might be doing telephone calls direct, one-on-one or via Zoom. Some of them also are doing more of like a group approach, a group approach to selling, whether it's a master class or webinar. I know people don't like the title webinar, but something that looks like a webinar, right? Where they're providing a lot of information and value, but they do have an enrollment, essentially a little mini enrollment conversation at the end of that. Do you work with folks around that process as well? And how is it different from the one-on-one process?
Yeah, it really depends what kind of offer you have,
Mhm.
how that is structured at, at what price point. If you enroll like for a group and you enroll on a bigger scale using webinars or master classes, then depending on the price point, you probably can just make the offer within the masterclass or the webinar and people will buy. But then when you have, especially when you spend more of your personal time with the person,
Mhm.
you want to make sure that it's the right person, that it's
Right.
not someone, where you see red flags everywhere, but you want to make sure you enjoy the time working
Mhm.
together, and it's probably a different investment.
Mhm.
So in those conversations, you do want to take your time and you do want to make sure that the person is a match, right?
Mhm.
When you switch that in your mind, that you think, well, it's not about me getting the client, it's
Yes.
about the person applying from my valuable time, from my skills to work with me. It kind of
Mhm.
changes the outlook on the situation, and it can give you just way more confidence. If the
Mm.
person qualifies, great, you invite
Mhm.
them. If they don't qualify, great, you send them somewhere else. It's
Yeah.
that simple if
Oh,
you let.
yeah. Well, and I love you pointing out the importance of that part of the process, that it's a two-way vetting, right? Because again, it's
Mhm.
how some people can get the wrong people inside of their group offer, their group program. And I've had to work with plenty of those clients who, on the back end, having to get those people back out of their programs.
Yeah. And that is a pain too. Like if you want to stay away from that kind of
Mm.
pain and trouble, make wise choices in the process, in the beginning. Like put those markers where you say, well,
Mhm.
like, I always ask myself, like, would my soulmate client have asked that question?
Mhm.
And usually when something feels weird, you already, you know it, you feel it in your
Yeah.
gut.
Yeah.
Right. For example, my clients would never, like, we would have a conversation, they get my full attention.
Mm.
And then if they would say at the end, well, can you send me that offer? I'm like, no, I'm not your secretary. I'm not your personal assistant. Like, you should have taken notes, you should have been prepared. Like, that for me would be like a red flag. If
Mm.
somebody would go like, can you, no, I'm not going to sit here, type all the stuff or have a template, do copy paste.
Mhm.
That's just not what my soulmate client would do. So
Mm.
we make sure you know who you want to work with and how they would behave in a situation like a sales call. And then you know very fast if it's a yes
Mhm.
for you or a no.
I love that. So a couple things, and I'll ask you next about the soulmate client. I want to get into that a
Mhm.
little bit more, but what comes up for me right now is how often people have opportunities to fix outcomes in their business by looking at the system that they designed, right? Because we all have
Mhm.
systems, whether we call them a system or not, but looking at every step and even micro step along the way, is this going to result in my ideal client, my soulmate client, right? Is it a messaging problem, or is it a system problem, right? Because I think so often we can look at the system we've created and apply the fix there.
Yeah, absolutely. And also
Hi.
like the clarity within us, right?
Yes.
That if you are not clear, and then it's a question of your energy, like, do you come from a place of lack, like I need this client, or do you come from a place of abundance? It's like, yeah, I'd like to have a deal, I want a deal, but not necessarily this one, right? Then
Yes.
then it's like a different energy, and it's easy to say no if you don't feel that this is a
Yeah.
match.
Oh, it's so
Yeah.
true. Your example of even would they ask that question or approach it that way reminds me that, like in my own business, I've had some potential clients show up where I've even done like an initial consultation to learn more about their business, help them start to map some of their legal needs. But then their follow-up was terrible. They did not prioritize, like they acted like they were ready to move forward. They had me put engagement letters together, various things, which all takes time on my part, right? And then wouldn't
Yeah.
respond for 2 months and then want me to go through the whole thing again. And there've been a couple of those instances, and I get it from the standpoint that many of us get busy in our lives and certain things end up taking a back burner. But if somebody is showing up to have legal work done and they're still letting it take a back burner, like they're just not ready for it and they're not ready for my service. And so that's one of the things that I look at is how responsive are they to me? I can't work with a client who I don't hear from for 2 months.
Yeah, no, that's a no-go.
Right? So even
Yeah.
at the beginning, if they're not showing some attentiveness to our correspondence or to their own follow-up, it's a no, even if they look absolutely like my ideal clients. And I've had several of those that do. They're at a phase in business where they're making plenty of money. They have actual legal needs. I know they would actually be probably one of the bigger clients in my practice. I've said no because I know that it will take so much energy to manage that client.
Yeah, you want to have fun working with your clients,
Yes.
right? I love it. Like when I work with my clients, I come with a lot of energy. And then after the call, I go out with a lot of energy, even more sometimes, because it
Yes.
was so much fun to have that session to solve whatever needed to be solving, or, get rid of a mindset block or whatever it was. And then it's so fun if both parties, so to speak, like blossom and get out of the call totally inspired and motivated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
those people you want to work with, so that you have to ask yourself, like, am I dreaming, or is this like my life, right?
right. No, it is. I know exactly what you're talking about. Most of my clients are like that. When I show up to a Zoom call and I get off, I'm like, man, I love my clients. Like I just
Yeah.
feel, so happy that I get to work with the people that I do. So I want to move to this concept of the soulmate client. Will you share with us? I mean, I think a lot of people kind of get the gist of it, but share with us where that concept came from in your own work.
Yeah. So when I started learning about business, online business, like I never thought I'm going to be an entrepreneur, right? The same thing. I never thought I'm going to be in sales, but well, life gives you some opportunities. So when you take them, you might end up in a totally different place. So I learned like the client avatar. And for me, that always felt so heavy. Like, is it a male? Is it a female? What age? Do they have kids? What magazines do they read? What TV channels do they watch? What's the income? Blah, blah. Like even naming all that is like, I feel the drain.
Yeah.
And I thought like, my client, it doesn't really matter. Like I have clients that are in their 50s, maybe mid 60s. I also have clients that are in their mid 20s. Like how can, like, but it doesn't work for me, right? If you maybe, if you have like a medical product, or, if you have a service for children from the age 0 to 3 or something,
Right.
obviously you do need that, right? But
Yes.
like for coaching or mentoring or like a certain expertise, you don't.
Right.
And I always felt restricted. And so I thought like, well, what the person needs to be fun to work with. So I started to look like for those attributes, like all my clients, they're looking for freedom, right? They want to be the master of their time. And they want to have an income that allows them to do whatever they want to do and when they want to do it and with whom they want to do it and when and all these things. So I started to look more into that. And so the brief definition is basically, if you don't want to go out with the person for dinner or invite them to your place for dinner, it's probably not your soulmate. If you're not ready to, spend quality time with the person, and I'm not saying you need to invite your clients for dinner, right? But if you ask yourself the question, is this a person I would love to have at my place, like, my holy walls? And it's a no. It's probably not your soulmate. So who would you invite over? Right? Because these are the people you would have a ton of fun with. Like, who said that your clients can't be your friends and you can't hang out with them?
Yeah. No, I love that concept so much. And that seems like such a powerful litmus test, right? Because I think we can all automatically know who we would have over for dinner. And even with those clients, like I find even in the course of the work, we end up getting into conversations like that along the way anyways, right? And for me, I serve folks around the world. And so many times when I travel, I'm trying to like meet up with my clients so that we do get to hang out, right? And it's such a joy. So I totally understand that. And I love the simplicity of that litmus test.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, don't overcomplicate it, right? I mean, and especially when you do a one-on-one call, a sales call, you will feel that in an instant.
Totally.
Right? Just don't make up your mind in the first 3 minutes, right? Give that person a chance, right? Because you never know. Maybe you're not in a good mood today, and then you have the call, and then be open. But that like if after 10 minutes you say, well, I would not like to have dinner with this person. I would never ever hang out with them, but I would like to take their money. Then something is not okay.
Yeah, that is a no. I would love to hear more about your journey into entrepreneurship, right? So we heard a little bit about your early start in sales. Share with us the part of your journey where you transitioned into entrepreneurship. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, that's and in the sales job I was in, so cold calling, people usually don't last that long. Maybe a year, some people 2, and I lasted over a decade. I left that position that I started with 0 experience. I climbed the ladder. I became from, like junior sales consultant to sales director in only 7 years. And so I was like in that, basically that golden cage, so to speak. I knew what I was doing. I had great opportunities. Made good money because I sold successfully, and we all know sales, you get commissions. So I had like all this good stuff going for me, but I had this little voice, and maybe you have that too right now, listening or watching. It's like, is that all there is? Right? From the outside, everything looked pretty fine, but from the inside, I was like, that something was missing. And I was getting miserable, not just at the end, like in between, and then it got better, and then, you got the next promotion, and then it lasted a little while, and then there was always like, there must be more. And exactly. And also I felt like restricted, right? I had like these working hours when I had to be there, and there was not really an exception. And it was like same old. So I got like more responsibility, but nothing else really did change. And, still climbing the ladder in every new position, I thought, well, now I can make a difference. Now I can change things like I want them. And I had to figure out that, well, that was not the case. So the question was, well, what do I do from here? And I did not want to start somewhere else, because I thought, well, it's going to be the same thing, right? You are in a system that somebody else has created, and there's nothing bad. Like a lot of people love that. But I got really, really clear, and I wanted my freedom. I wanted to wake up when I want to wake up. Back then I woke up at 5. I left my home at 5:55 a.m. to catch a train, to commute to work for about 2 hours. That was my choice. I moved out of the city, right? So changed. And then I had like all the day working and then going back. So I was home at around 8 p.m. And there's just not a lot of life, even when you love your job. And I love what I was doing. That was like, I want to create, and I couldn't create. So, the pain becomes more and stronger. And then, luckily, my boss helped me to make faster decisions. Today, I'm like really, really grateful for that. Back then, I wasn't too happy, but it really helped for me to get really, really clear and to make a decision and to stop, wasting time and dabbling around, but really getting clear and saying, okay, that enough is enough. Like that's, that let's draw the line in the sand. And the question was like, well, what can I do? I have to become an entrepreneur because otherwise I don't want to work for someone.
Yeah.
And, I started with personal development. That's obviously is the best tool for becoming an entrepreneur, in case you haven't figured that out yet, watching or listening, as like, becoming an entrepreneur is really the best personal development tool. So I was in that, bubble of personal development. And I saw so many wonderful entrepreneurs who were so successful. I was like, well, if they can do it, why couldn't I do it? I mean, obviously I have to learn it, but hey, I learned how to sell that I never thought possible. So with entrepreneurship, that must work as well. So I, started to learn and to take, become parts of masterminds and programs. And I really, really invested, because if you don't want to invest in yourself, don't become an entrepreneur. Just don't. Have a job, have that security that you think you have, but don't become an entrepreneur. Like you really have to invest time and a ton of money to find those shortcuts, to learn from the people who already are where you want to go. And if you do that, I think that's the most important thing I learned in the process, right? And that I take myself as so important that I do allow myself to invest so I can learn. And I never look back. I'm so happy, like, not every morning, but many, many mornings. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Like, I'm so happy I made that decision. And it was a tough one, right? I let go of, I was there over 12 years. I had like all these clients, and since it was an event business, they would come back. So that was easier money, not easy money, but easier money to make, because they already loved the product. They knew me. And, I had these teams, the people I felt responsible for, and like the relationships. It was really, really tough to let that go. But, I did not regret a second of my decision.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you probably had a leg up on many people that make the leap into entrepreneurship with your background in sales.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. It's just my perception.
It's interesting that you say that, because that's what I thought. I thought like, well, with all that experience, I know how to sell, though all I have to do is sell. But you know what I discovered, Heather? The moment it was all me, like it was my brand, it was my creation, was my name, I struggled.
Yeah.
I figured out it's not just, I thought it's like, oh, it's like a different country. It's like a different planet. It's that different. Luckily, I had the experience, so it took me a while to realize what went wrong, so to speak, and then I could catch myself. And that's why I'm so passionate to help other entrepreneurs, because they don't have the experience. They don't know how to catch themselves. And it can be so easy and so much fun. So the earlier they start with really loving sales, and I always say sales is love, the better they will be, and the more successful they will be in their business. And it's the most important skill you need to have for running a successful business. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I had a conversation with another woman on the podcast, and she made a comment that I was like, it's so obvious, but it was interesting how it was like a big fat, sign in your face, because she's built and sold like 7 businesses, and
Wow.
yeah, multi 7 and 8 figure businesses. And she just said, yeah, I'm really good at revenue generation.
Yeah.
Right. And I know sales is a piece of it, but if you don't have it figured out, like, you just don't have any hope at revenue generation, right? And you've got to, because you also talk about this cycle of investment. If you're going to go into entrepreneurship, you better be good at investing in yourself and your business. And if you're not generating revenue, it's going to be a much slower path to get there.
Yeah.
What do you feel like for you were the hardest early lessons in your own path in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, like the revenue generation, actually, like really knowing that I need to develop great habits in making revenue and figuring out a system, right? That becomes easier. The more you work the system, the smoother it will run, because you make adjustments, and really, really figuring that out so that clients come on a regular base. And also, a lot of entrepreneurs, and I too, at the beginning, they started with visibility. Like really being out there, being seen is so important. You cannot hide. You're right. People have to see you, and some people will not like you nor love you, and you have to be okay with that.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a hard one, that, you talk about leaving a company and then suddenly you're alone and it feels like a very different planet, right? And I think that feeling even more of like, oh gosh, what if, because the brand, especially for folks that are developing a personal brand, right? Which I think are a lot of folks in your world, it does feel like a lot on your shoulders, and like everything stops with you, and particularly whether somebody relates to you, likes you, appreciates you. I think that can be a hard pill to swallow for people to just kind of get over it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I always tell my clients, you don't know what you don't know. Right, that you start, like I was all enthusiastic and starting, and I of course I had a plan, right? But then in the making, you think like, oh, like, okay, great, but now how do I get that email address? Like, well, I know what an opt-in is, but how do I create one for my business? And all of a sudden you have all of these questions that you did not really see coming, even though you prepared and had a plan, and you figure out that stuff. Well, guess what? While you figure out that stuff, you probably have a great excuse of not generating revenue because you stopped talking to people. Right? So having that balance where you actually make sure you reach out, you connect, you form a great network, you maybe find joint venture partners that help you promote, and you promote their stuff, right? That you cannot stop that process, because it will bite you later. To focus on, oh, how do I get an opt-in? How do I get the email? Do I need an assistant right now, or can I have one later? Like, how do I pay for it? Like all the stuff, it's all on you at the beginning. So, really prioritizing in the best way possible, knowing that without sales, you have a business that doesn't have any blood, so to speak, right? And we all know a being without blood is not gonna work or live long. So you have to make sure you get the blood into your business. You have that being that you're creating nurtured, and that needs sales.
Yeah.
And the more sales you make, the more you can reinvest, right? Into yourself, maybe into a team. But it all starts with you inviting people to buy.
Yeah. And having the courage to do that, right? I still love that courage piece, because I think a lot of people stop short. They get to the point, like I saw a post the other day on social media and I thought, oh, this is so true for so many people. They stop short of making the ask and like, oh, well, I'll send you an email with more information or with the follow-up or with your options, right?
Why would you do that? And you know, one thing I really want to put out there is you don't serve the person. You are doing that to them. You're doing them a disservice, right? Because they talk to you, right? Let me just illustrate that real quick with a little sheet of paper. Just get one here. So when they talk to you, right, they have all the information, you answered their questions, so they know that much, right? They know all that they can know that fits on this piece of paper, right? So now you're not clear, or maybe you say stuff like, oh, let's talk next week or whatever it is, because you don't dare to ask about an appointment the next day or whatever it is. So now what happens is the person sleeps over at the night. Then they might talk to their spouse, to their best friend, you know,
And for those
entrepreneurship.
of you,
Why don't you get a secure job, right?
right.
And then another night and another night. And then all they know is that, well, it was a nice conversation with Christine, but you know, that investment, no,
Not worth it.
I'm not prepared to invest. And that's it. Voila.
Right.
So
for those of
like
you
doing them a disservice.
I just wanted to say, for those of you who are not watching or listening, with each of those steps, Christine was folding that little sticky note in half and then half again and then half again. But it's really true, right? People, it's the same reason why, for example, people have to go through my legal basics boot camp multiple times, right? They don't show up and remember it all and absorb it all. They have to come back again to get a next piece. And usually there is a certain amount of learning and education that people get from those one-on-one calls. And you know, the timing is right for them to be in the position of decision making when it's all in front of them. But you're right, you give them time, other stuff takes priority, they forget, they're going to misremember, right? And that was a great illustration.
Right. Especially because they come into your conversation or to your call because they have a need, right? They have a desire. And when you figure out that you are the perfect person to support them, you're really doing them a disservice by saying, well, you know, I know you're sinking, you might be drowning, but hey, let me come back later. It's not good.
Yeah, so true. Christine, I've loved this conversation. Out of respect for your time, I'd love to know, where do you like for people to connect with you online?
Yeah, like, you know, Facebook would be a great place. LinkedIn, second choice for me. I'm just not hanging out there too much, right? But if you're a LinkedIn person, great. Like, you know, hit me up and send me a message. Please send me a message. Let me know you heard me on Heather's podcast. And yeah, Facebook, my website, christineschlonski.com. And, you know, if you love podcasts, Hard Sells Podcast would be a great choice to listen into.
Yes, I highly recommend Christine's podcast. And we will share all your links, Christine, to your website, your podcast, and your various social links that you'd like us to share on the show notes page. So hop over to legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Look for Christine's episode. You can find everything there. Christine, I think you had a free offer for people, which I think is extremely generous. If you're listening, you're going to want to pay attention to this. You want to share a little bit about what it is?
Yeah, definitely. It's a sales assessment call. So what we will be doing is we will look at your process on the call, like where are you in your business? What really is the big gap you want to close? And then I will give you, depending on your situation, 1, 2, 3 steps you can take next to really fix that. And, you know, if at the very end you say, well, Christine, how can we work together? I will be more than happy to make you an invitation and to show you a way to get rid of sales fear or phobia forever.
Oh, I love that. So you get to connect with the expert directly. And if you're listening, I highly recommend you take Christine up on this. Christine, I have loved this. I so love what you do because it's critical. It's just critical for the types of entrepreneurs that we serve. Any final takeaways that you would like to leave people with?
Yeah, I would love to encourage every one of you, like you listening, you watching, please, please, please don't throw your gifts away.
Mm.
Just stop dreaming, act now. You know, you serve people when you sell, and sales is love. And we know that when we share love, it grows, right?
Mm.
Doesn't get smaller or diminishes, it grows. So go out there and just blossom and shine. And your soulmate clients will love working with you, but you have to show up for them first. So please just show up.
I love that so much. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you so much for having me, Heather. It was so much fun.